Now on Cavuto.
New Jersey's license plates may say "shore" to please, but don't tell that to oil drillers. Senator Robert Menendez talks about the effort to keep oil rigs away from the state's coastline. GM may be considering putting some of its brands in the junkyard. We'll see whether a less is more strategy is the best way for the struggling car maker to survive. Also, the high price of gas was supposed to mean that everybody was staying home for the 4th of July, right? And why were the airports packed on the weekend? We've got the scoop on what's really going on. And it was another down day on Wall Street. Have the bulls gone on a permanent summer vacation, or is there still some fight left in investors?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Sullivan in for Neil Cavuto. Not in my backyard, or at least not off my beaches. That is from New Jersey politicians responding to calls that America should allow more offshore oil drilling to help ease the oil crunch. Senator Robert Menendez is among those who oppose the idea. He is sponsoring a bill to permanently prevent more drilling off the coast of the mid-Atlantic states. And Senator Menendez joins us now from Washington. Senator, I'm Brian Sullivan. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Talk to us about your bill. I believe its acronym is COAST, why you are pushing it, and what you hope to get out of it.
Well, ultimately, what we want to do is preserve the moratorium that's had bipartisan support going back to the first President Bush for the last 25 years, and just saying, let's make that permanent. Because we look at the reality that drilling off the coast will really produce very little. We've seen 860,000 barrels less a day consumed by Americans as a result of high gas prices. We've seen the Saudis produce another 500,000 barrels a day in recent weeks, and that hasn't done anything to reduce gas prices. And all of the drilling off of our coastlines, the best estimate is that it would create 200,000 barrels. Well, if 860,000 barrels less of consumption, 500,000 barrels of new production has done absolutely nothing to reduce gas prices, why would we take the risk environmentally and economically to the tourism and the coastlines of the east and west coast in order to achieve that? And that's why we believe the moratorium should be made permanent.
Because shouldn't we be doing everything we can to reduce the dependence on foreign oil, and so Saudi Arabia wouldn't have to pump an additional 500,000 barrels a day?
Well, the reality is that, first of all, it would take a decade before we'd see the first drop of oil. We wouldn't see full production into the year 2030. The effect on gas prices today would certainly be nil, and probably in the future as well. And I would ask, why do the oil industry that has 68 million acres of federal land already leased to them and approved for drilling are not being pursued by them? Before we try to risk the coastlines that have significant economic benefits to the states along the east and west coast, it seems to me that we should get the oil companies to pursue the 68 million acres they already have under their domain of federal land and try to get the oil that is there.
Because some of that oil is too deep or too expensive, and what they're looking at is the Outer Continental Shelf may be a little bit easier and less expensive to get. By some estimates, Senator, 18 billion barrels of oil set offshore the United States. Even at 20 million barrels a day of production, that is, or consumption, that is basically 5 years worth of oil. If we can reduce the dependence on foreign oil by 5 years, long term, that will make a significant dent in prices.
Well, you know, to hear that view as well as Senator McCain and President Bush, it sounds like you'd drill tomorrow and you'd have gas in your tank the next day and your prices would go down. The reality is Americans understand when they present it with the facts that this doesn't make any sense. All we do is perpetuate our dependency on foreign oil. The reality is, why would they lease the 68 million acres and pay royalties on it if in fact there's nothing to be drilled for? The reality is there's plenty to be drilled for. As a matter of fact, the Energy Information Administration of this administration says that we could nearly double our domestic output if they would pursue those lands that are already in their portfolio. What they want is to use this crisis to get more access to land in their portfolio, and in this case the territorial waters of the United States, and that will end up building up their share price, but will do nothing about gas prices today.
Well, Senator, you know, I agree with you that it will take a decade at least to see any benefit, which leads me back to 1979 when I was 8 years old. My father owned a gas station. There were gas lines, and boy, I wish somebody would have done something then, because a decade passed when I started high school. So why not start now, so that 10 years from now we will have a benefit? We didn't do anything under the Carter administration.
I think we should definitely go now and do the things that will break our dependency from oil, period. The reality is that we have in the Senate offered to extend renewable tax credits that ultimately make a lot of sense in moving us to wind, solar, biomass, cellulosic ethanol, continue raise fuel efficiency standards on our cars, which we let a quarter of a century go by before doing it. Those are the things that are going to break our dependency not only on foreign oil but on domestic oil, and do something about the consequences to global warming. That will give us the type of independence we need and the economic security that we want.
Well, the cellulosic ethanol, most of that would come from Brazil, which is not the United States. And of course, we just turned over the biggest sugar plant in America to protect the Everglades. I understand that. But how do we, okay, New Jersey, listen, I love the New Jersey shore. My wife's family has some history in Seaside Heights. I understand that, and you want to protect the beaches. At the same time, New Jersey is one of the leading importers of oil and gas. We had the Athos spill in Delaware River. We had a benzene lawsuit by ExxonMobil in Kilvan Cull. There's estimates of 1 million barrels spilled in the Arthur Kill waterway in New Jersey. So what is the environmental risk when we're already having problems with the massive amount of tanker-borne oil that is imported into your and my state?
Well, the reality is all we would do is get more of some of the difficult consequences we've already faced from this industry. And tourism is the second biggest driver of New Jersey's economy in the billions of dollars. The reality is, and property values would dramatically drop. And those who say that this can be done efficiently, well, look at what happened in Hurricane Rita and Katrina, where 700,000 gallons of oil and gas were spilled during the hurricane. The reality is there is a risk with drilling. And that risk, compared to the economic consequences, compared to the environmental degradation, the property values that go down, and for waiting a decade before you even see the first drop of oil that would do nothing about gas prices, instead of focusing on having the renewable energy sources. And by the way, cellulosic doesn't just have to come from Brazil. There's a lot of efforts in different forms of substances to make cellulosic fuel. So we have the ingenuity in America to accomplish our energy independence. We just don't need to continue our addiction on oil.
It is a passionate fight. Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey. Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
All right.